on in-school suspension, timeout rooms, whatever you want to call it, where they put in a room with the teacher and they must do the work. We try not to do that because the kid is missing the actual interaction with the teacher. Is that clear? There are other alternatives to suspension. Now, if after 10 days, you must have what is called a superintendent's hearing, and it's almost like a trial, where the student is entitled to counsel, has given all the due process under the 14th Amendment, hear the charges against them, entitled to counsel, and so forth and so on. And who is at that hearing? The superintendent is, so to speak, the judge in the trial. There's no jury. There's a school board lawyer, and there's the child's lawyer if they need one. And they can call witnesses too. And then a decision is made by the superintendent upon the hearing of the evidence, and it goes on from there. Now, a kid can be assigned to another school. A kid can be put on home instruction because they may be endangering the other students. There are all kinds of things here. Is that clear? Any questions about that? Yes, sir.
Does the teacher have say in how long it can get suspended, or that's the
The teacher will be called as yes, of course. There's input, obviously, in the hearing. Sure.
But remember, the principal suspends, not you.
Yeah, but the teacher will go to the principal, and then the principal will send the documents to the superintendent.
And in New York City right now, first of all, how many people probably are thinking of teaching in the 5 boroughs? Okay. Remember now the big push is unofficially not to suspend children at all. That's the latest.
Okay, there's something called zero tolerance. Zero tolerance. We say zero tolerance for different things. Let me just give you a couple. It means this, that you commit certain things, we have no, these are the prescribed punishments, and there are no exceptions. Give you example, bullying is one example. Most school districts have what's called zero tolerance. If you're bullying somebody else, here's what's going to happen. They actually have these prescribed ahead of time. Obviously, violence of certain sorts, bringing firearms in, things like that. There are some things called zero tolerance. We do not have any exception to that rule because they're serious infractions. Is that clear? Now, some districts have more lenient ones than others, but the one that's right now going right, bullying is, I think, the one that most are associated with. The freedom of speech. Very quick. We can go on forever with these things. I'm just giving you a little touch of it, a little beach. There's something called the Tinker case, which is interesting. I believe it was 1965, yes. The Tinker case was a case where, during the Vietnam War, it has nothing to do, okay, in terms of ours here, but just it prescribed the Supreme Court case. What happened? Some high school kids came in with black bands on their arms protesting the war. And the principal of the school said, if you continue wearing those, we're going to suspend you. Well, the kids continued to wear them, and the principal suspended them. The kids went to court, first the state courts, and it went eventually up to the Supreme Court, the famous Tinker case. And the courts ruled, the Supreme Court ruled, that the students have the right to express their rights of freedom of speech. Could be wearing something, so forth and so on. They gave specific examples. As long as it was not a disruption to the school day and denied, okay, the right of education for other students who were not part of this demonstration. Everybody understand that? Okay, so the kids, okay, it was done peacefully. They didn't chant in the middle of class. It didn't go crazy. They just wore the armbands. They were allowed to remain in school. The principal could not suspend them for that. So there are cases that went after that. For example, I know in our school, we had a case where kids began wearing, you can tell how dated this is, in the 70s with long hair. And the principal said, oh, no. I just started out, remember this? The principal, you can't have long hair. Kids can't wear long hair. This is threw them out of school today. Parents protested. And because under this case, okay, they were not disruptive in any way, just had the right to wear their hair long, were admitted back into school. This would be an example of the Tinker case. Okay, and Last one we talk about is, two things, search and seizure and school prayer. Search and seizure. Very quickly. Search and seizure is something that's very important because you should understand what is school property, what is not. Lockers are part of school property. A car parked on a school lot, school property, is considered part of the school property. Now, for example, kid comes to the office and says, I think so-and-so is selling marijuana from their locker during lunchtime, right? You have to have what is called reasonable suspicion. You can't just go to his locker because I think he has it. I have evidence. Well, now you have to ask the student the question, what do you think he's selling marijuana? I've seen him. Uh-huh. When did you see him? Or other witnesses who saw it. Oh, yes, so-and-so. You name his name. Now, if a group of students came and they all saw this, would that be reasonable suspicion? Yes. Then we could search his locker, and if marijuana is found, police are called, where's that? Is that clear? And then if you had locker clean-out days? You never did? We always did. It was a way of excuse to find things in lockers. So we went around that. One of the things we had a problem with, this district I came was a really beautiful district, one of the best top 10 in the nation. We had a problem with alcohol, especially around the dances, you know. And so we got the right to inspect kids that come in, see if they had alcohol in possession. We had the right to once they stepped on school property. Here's another question. Can you please come into a building and use dogs to search out for drugs? If you have reasonable suspicion, good evidence that this may happen, dogs can be used. Strip searching is something else. There's a fine line there. But that's another case, because we can go on forever here. I'm just visiting the tip of the iceberg. Finally, school prayer. I'm just giving another thing about school prayer. This does not apply to private institutions, such as St. John's, okay, or if you went to Catholic school, for example, or any other religious school. In school, I remember when we first started out, I remember when I first started as a teacher, we had what's called a moment of silence. This is in public school first, as a teacher. And kids could pray. It was time taken out of the day, beginning of the day, to pray or think about having for lunch. Just stand there, whatever, after the Pledge of Allegiance. And eventually, that case went up to the Supreme Court, as other school did, and they said you can't have a designated time called for school prayer. Okay, because that separates church and state, violates separation of church and state. However, under No Child Left Behind, you can have students have religious clubs in public school, meetings. Kids can pray on their own in public school, as long as at a designated time. The kid can do it at any time you want. And the bottom line here is this, with school prayer. You can teach about religion, history, because it's filled with American history, for example, but you can't preach. This is the difference. You see the difference? You teach but not preach with school prayer. And last is about the Pledge of Allegiance. And also, by the way, with school prayer, a lot, and if you go to the South, before football games, they have a prayer. Do you know that? Is that legal in public school? Technically it's not, but they still have it. There were also school prayers in the locker room. Member of the clergy, the football teams, in public schools. So it depends where you are, and what you want to enforce. The other thing is that you should know, with the Pledge of Allegiance, very quickly in line with that. Can you force a kid, let's say your building says you have Pledge of Allegiance in the morning, right after the announcements, whatever. Can you force a kid to stand there and pledge allegiance? No. Here's the thing that you do. Nor can you ask the student, why don't you pledge the flag? You can't do that either. What you can ask is, how do you want to handle this? Do you want to leave the room? Do you want to stand silently? How do you want to handle it? So you can't disrupt the rest of the kids from doing it, but how do you want to handle it? I don't want to embarrass you. Is that clear? But you can't ask why. So I want to make that point. just the tip of the iceberg. I can go on forever. So these are just some things, and we can go much deeper too, at some point.
Okay. I'm gonna hand some things out.
Take care of me, I'll hand it out.
Okay, not yet.
Oh.
One second. How many people had me for an ed class? Lucky. Lucky.
Wait a minute, how many had me? Okay.
Who had both of us?
And you
There you go.
survived, see?
You go. Listen, we could talk about this for days. This could be a 3-credit class about the legalities, rules. Okay, first of all, I want to mention to you, just taking a look at all of you, I keep on saying this to St. John's people in school, that you're all going to be wonderful, successful teachers. Okay? You are, because you're so trained, you're so confident, you're all going to be great. A lot of people, I think your first worry is, will I be able to control the class? That's a big, big issue. When you start teaching, where are my future New York City school teachers, you think? 5 boroughs. Where are my teachers in the suburbs, you think? Where are my people who think they're going to teach in the parochial school system? Okay, you think. Of course, things can change. When you start teaching, you have to belong to the union. It's called a closed shop in economic terms. You have to join the union, okay? How many people do that? That means you have to pay union dues. It comes out approximately over the 12 months, close to about $800, but you can claim it on your taxes, okay? One of the benefits is they will protect you. The union will legally protect you. Should I tell them my story?
Yeah, tell your story.
Here's a great story, but it's true. I'm minding my own business. For those people who don't know me, I was a teacher and assistant principal in the same building for 36 years. It's like a prison sentence.
See, I had paradise. I get it before you go on. He had a car, he tried to park his car on the street, he got tires ripping off, and his dashboard, his radio. I get a nice space right in front of my office, right there. You know. The worst thing that happens is that bird crap off. That was it.
They would break into the cars, steal your battery, wait for the end of the school day, and sell the battery back to you. Okay?
It's awful. We're also very creative.
Ready? I did not like to eat in the teacher's cafeteria, okay? What do teachers talk about? Johnny did this, Susan said that. Didn't anyone do something different over the weekend? Didn't anyone see it, okay? So I used to eat in the dean's office, my lunch, okay? The school I worked in, we had 1,700 students. The school was built for 1,000. The school was built in 1910. When I retired, they had just converted it from coal heat to oil heat. Coal heat, that's how old the building was. The school had a principal, and we had 4 assistant principals, 4 deans, and 4 security guards. The school was a very difficult school. Guns, knives, drugs, violence, gangs, and that was just the teachers. The children. It was a lot of severe problems there. Okay, I'm in the dean's office one day. 2 of the deans were my friends. I used to hang out there. And I'm trying to think, was it a salami sandwich that day? I forget, but I was enjoying my sandwich, minding my own business, when all of a sudden, our kid storms into the room, and the room was big. It was like from myself to the wall there, okay? And discipline cases were sent. If you were a teacher and a kid was acting out, you could send the kid to the dean's office with a student monitor to make sure they got there. This kid storms in, screaming, cursing, berserk. I had never seen the child before in my life. I didn't even know he attended the school. But I said to myself, gee, 1,700 kids, how do you know every face? But The kid he was taking chairs and flinging them, steel lockers, desks, he went berserk. And a second later, this other student walked in with the note from the teacher saying, you know, what the infraction was, which is meaningless now, but two of the deans and then two security guards were chasing after him because he apparently was going wild in the halls, restrained him. They actually physically restrained him. But he was kicking and he was wild. He was an 8th grader. I never touched the kid. I never got near the child. And they called the police, and the police came. We were in the 104th precinct. That's just on the borderline of Brooklyn and Queens, Bushwick/Ridgewood. And they handcuffed him because he was resisting arrest. An 8th grader, you know, wild like that with the adrenaline has the power of 10 people. Okay. Bell rang, finished my salami sandwich, went to class. That was the end of the day. The next day, very next day, I'm in my classroom, and there's a knock at the door, and I look through the window, there's a gentleman there. Are you, sir? Yes. Boom. I get a summons to appear in court. What? I'm stunned that he walked away. I am being taken to criminal court in Manhattan, it was downtown by City Hall, for harassment of a minor. So I immediately go to my union representative. Every school, you will have a union rep in your building, whether you teach in the suburbs or you teach in the city. He said, yeah, I know. Apparently, he told me, every adult who was in the room at that time is now being sued, being taken to court. I said, I never touched the kid. I have to appear in court. And I'm saying to myself, do I have to get an attorney now? And hold on, he says, later this afternoon, a union attorney is coming to the building to meet with the whole group of us. A union attorney. So I didn't have to pay any legal fees or go to a law firm office or anything like that. Okay? Apparently, the child's mother did not sue the school or the City of New York Department of Education. She sued us individually, okay, for harassment of a minor, and it was going to be heard in criminal court in Manhattan. There was a date. So the attorney said, we have to appear, which means I would miss a day, but you don't lose pay. And then she told us what the plan was going to be. That they would counter-sue. That apparently in the altercation, the boy had, you know, breaking up his wild actions, had touched or hit the two deans. Okay? So they were going to now counter-sue, since he was 15 years old, in family court in Queens, which is in Jamaica. Okay? So in other words, we would have to appear at both cases. So the date comes to appear in criminal court in Manhattan, and there at 9 in the morning, I see the boy is sitting there with his mother and his attorney. What struck me, and this is true, the kid is wearing a tuxedo with patent leather shoes and a ruffled pink shirt, a tuxedo shirt with ruffled cuffs. We sat there all day. The case was postponed. At 5 o'clock, we had to go. And they set another date. In the meantime, our attorney said to us, we will still go along with our case in family court against this child. And that's what happened. We went to family court in Jamaica, Queens. And it's the morning. There's the boy again there with his attorney, with his tuxedo. And one of the first cases, the judge asked the two lawyers, and I was sitting right up front, and I heard the conversation. And the judge is saying to the two attorneys, are you serious? Are you wasting the court's time with this? why isn't this being handled with the school or the Board of Education? And he said, counselors, please come into my office, okay? And they went into the office, they came out, and our union attorney said to us, we spoke to the judge, and the judge said, this is a waste of the court's time. They will be willing to drop their case against us in criminal court if we drop this case against the boy in family court. And our attorney said, and I told the judge, if it's okay with you, that we'll go along with this. Okay? Just minding my own business, I'm involved with this stuff. Okay? And now, the two attorneys formally tell the judge that they both decided to drop the cases. And the judge said, I'd like the young boy to come up front, and the teachers and deans and security guards who were involved in the case to please come up front, and I want everyone to shake hands with each other. This is a true story. So we had to shake hands with this young boy. That was the end of the case. We left. The next day, I'm in my classroom, knock on the door, there's the attorney, the child's attorney. And I knew what, we had to sign off that we were dropping the case against him. And I said to him, let me ask you a question. What was the story with the boy wearing a tuxedo? And he said, I told him, mother, have him dress nicely for court. Okay? When this all happened, or any incident that takes place, you have to formally write a statement. So you just want to, this is a New York City written statement form. We're going to give this out to you, okay? This is what it looks like. Do me a favor, just hold this down. All right? All right?
Make a copy?
There's enough. Now, we're giving you the worst case scenarios, right? This is the worst. The odds are 100 million to 1. You're going to start teaching, you're going to have the nicest kids in the world, you're going to have the nicest school, and you're not going to have any of these problems. Okay? All right, so take a look at the first one, the written statement form. Now, this one here, okay? Believe it or not, it still says gender on this. This could be a statement that the teacher fills out, or a child fills out, anyone who was there at the moment who witnessed any situation. Let's say you're in a classroom and some money was taken from your pocketbook on your desk. Maybe a student, other students were there and they witnessed this, okay? So here they would put name, gender, male or female, of course, status, student or teacher aide, and they very specifically write down what took place, okay? And then at the bottom, you sign your name to it. Telephone number, obviously, you're not going to give your phone number out. Why that still is there, I don't know. Okay? It has to be signed. And remember, everything has to be specific. Okay? Another case. My last year, a child was murdered in the building. You remember that story, right? Child was actually murdered in my school. Murdered. It was in the news. All right? And those young people here who've had myself or Professor Ehrlich, we always emphasize, always even a little notebook like this, let me just show this for a second, sorry. Anything like this, a spiral, something, in your classroom, always have it ready. If there's something that takes place, okay, you want to develop a pattern. It doesn't have to be full sentences, just write the date, Susan threw her lunch across the room, okay? Very specific, but as brief as possible. So you develop a pattern, like not doing their homework. What do you think, Michael? You're going to save me here, ready? Johnny cursed me. What's wrong with that?
You need to write exactly what I said.
Right, you have to say the exact curse, okay? That's what the statement is about there also, okay? A student was murdered in my building. I had the perpetrator when he was in the 6th grade. A discipline problem. The school did everything possible to work with this child, okay? Everything, guidance, therapists. The kid had been suspended. It was one story after another. This was a real severe child. And I actually remember when he was in the 6th grade, he was sitting, we still had seats in rows. Now everything, you know, is the group seats, right? And he had a hole puncher in his hand. I'm going, whoa. And the girl in front of him, he's punching holes with the hole puncher in the back of her blouse. And she didn't realize it. I mean, what are you doing? Like, it was my first sign that something's not right here, you know? And of course, I wrote it up very specifically. You know, I took the hole puncher from him. Open school night, when I met his mother, and I was very specific. I had everything very specifically written, why he was failing the first quarter. No homework. Here are the dates he didn't do his homework, and so on. Everything very specific. And I had known from the assistant principal of the grade, he had been in trouble with other classes, and he had been suspended, fights in the lunchroom. And I had a translator standing by just in case, for any parent who had an issue with English. I thought she didn't understand me, and she turned around. I was not getting eye contact, and she turns around, and now I see she's got this big black eye. She says, I know. Look what he does to me. He beats me up. He steals my money. This was a 6th grader. Okay, so at one point, and this I'm telling everyone now, I always say this, you got to keep your goals, in reason. We're not going to change the world. This kid, the kid beats up his mother. What chance do you have as a teacher in the classroom? But when he was in the 8th grade, he came to school one day with a baseball bat, and it was in January, okay? His homeroom teacher caught the bat, the boy with the bat took the bat. And at that moment, the assistant principal was walking down the hall, and she said, I'll take the bat, and I will give it back to you, to the child, at the end of the day. Come back at the end of the day. Big mistake. Eventually, she was involved with the police as well, concerning the murder. That's a weapon with a kid like that, right? The boy, the bat, should have been brought down to the dean's office. The principal should have been involved. The homeroom teacher did the right thing. She confiscated the bat. Okay, and during the course of the day, it was after lunch. The boy was up on the 5th floor, and the assistant principal saw him. Oh, long as you're up here, let me give you your bat. How do you spell this? Dar, is it D-U-R-R or D-U-H? I'm not sure. Right? He takes the bat, goes down to the gym. He was apparently gunning for someone in another gang who supposedly owed him $20, and he beat him in the hall to death in front of the gym. Okay? Who's there but my buddy, one of the phys ed teachers? And he, separated the poor child, died eventually that evening. And now, this is now gonna be a major criminal case. He killed someone. He was, my friend was there at the trial, his representation was the union lawyer, and there was also a New York City Department of Education lawyer. This is now, you're involved, right? Okay? He was given 3 years to 7 years, okay, at an upstate New York juvenile correctional center. The reason why was the first, although he had been in trouble with the police before, was the first time he was going to be incarcerated. That means in prison. 1 year goes by. I get a phone call from my friend, the gym teacher. He says, "You're not going to believe this. What's going on?" He lived out in the island in Northport. A police car, a New York City police car, pulls up to his house with 2 detectives. Yeah? They said, "Listen, we just found out the boy is being let out after 1 year. He will be back in the old neighborhood by the school within about 2 weeks. Okay? And we know he's going to be gunning for you." Right? Because he was the teacher who witnessed this. So he said, the police told him the next day, "You better tell your union or the Department of Education, you have to be transferred out of there. You can't stay in that building." Okay? So the reason why I tell you these stories is you are protected legally. Now, we've given you some of these other brochures too. When you start working, you belong to the union. You do not negotiate your own contract with the school district or the city of New York, okay? The contract has been negotiated for you. And every time the contract is due, the members vote to accept it or not. So when you start, they will give you the contract. Now, in New York City, the contract is a booklet this thick, okay? And I mean, you need a legal attorney to help you go through it, okay? What we just gave you now is this little booklet, some parts of this booklet here.